little crowd. I'm Kate Kelly from LCA and just wanted to chat with you about how we can take better charge of our lake's health and future using a watershed approach by looking at how we can collaborate from the top of the watershed down to the bottom using an all-in approach. Okay, so we know Lake Champlain is a really important and valued resource for Vermonters. 2017, the Clean Water Report by the Vermont State Treasurer said that $300 million is raised in tax revenues and fees from tourism each year. And this number, tourism, is really only a portion or about a fifth of what we bring in because of our clean lake and natural resources. A polluted Lake Champlain, like you can see here with some algal blooms, is really costly to all taxpayers. It may be costly for generations to come. We lose money from tourism, but also from decreased property values, as well as lake cleanup expenses by failing to slow down our rate of phosphorus loading into Lake Champlain. Phosphorus is really one of the nutrients that causes a lot of our problems. So the 20-year total clean water compliance costs were projected to be 2.3 billion or 115 million per year, according to that same clean water report. So we really have to work at every level, from property owners to municipalities to the state, to restore the health and functioning of our watershed. We're going to need everybody to pitch in, from me who lives in Heinsberg to you guys down here in Charlotte, to really help improve our lake's water quality. Okay, so I mentioned phosphorus. It's a nutrient, and it causes some problems when it gets into our water bodies. We have really phosphorus-rich clay soils here in the Lake Champlain Basin. So during our rain events, those soils with these tiny clay soil particles, along with any other pollutants that may be picked up, manure, fertilizer, etc., get washed out into Lake Champlain. They get carried the farthest and the fastest because they're these really tiny particles. And the smallest amount of bare soils can lead to erosion that then transports the soil down into Lake Champlain, as you can see in this picture. Phosphorus provides the bulk of food for algae, and this can result in excess algae growth, which then can lead to things like fish kills, and also can contribute to cyanobacteria blooms or toxic blue-green algae blooms. I show this slide just because I find it really interesting, especially because I was in a city this past weekend in Washington, D.C. And on the left side of the screen, you see sort of a more natural environment where most of the water, about 50% of it, is infiltrating or sinking down into the ground. About 10% of the water, when it falls, is running off the surface, and then 40% is evaporating or getting back up into the air in some way. And then in the city on the right side, you'll see that there's only about 15% that really gets down into the ground. 55% of that water gets sort of as runoff off the surface, and 30% as evaporation. So looking around a true city like Washington, D.C., there is hardly a scrap of green grass anywhere. It's just all impervious surface. And when all that runoff goes either into the sewers or directly off into the water bodies, you end up with a lot more water sort of flowing through the streams and swales and whatnot. In turn, that water, with all the volume and velocity that it has, can pick up more sediments and cause more erosion on the stream banks and that kind of thing. So that's part of the problem in and of itself, is those developed sort of lands. So in this chart, you're looking at sort of two pie charts. On the left is how much Vermont contributes to the phosphorus load in the Lake Champlain Basin. We have about 631 metric tons per year that we contribute to that load. And on the right, you see a slightly smaller pie chart. This is essentially how much we need to reduce our phosphorus to in order to meet this target, the total maximum daily load that's set by the EPA and Vermont DEC. So most of those, sort of the largest portion of those decreases come from the agricultural lands. But also the developed land contributes quite a bit of that phosphorus load. So overall, we need to reduce phosphorus by about 30% to reach our targets. One of the things that we've done in the past that has really historically caused problems and currently causes problems is trying to straighten riverways or waterways to kind of maximize the amount of land available for agriculture, or to, allow our backyards to be backyards. So on the left side of the screen, you can see sort of the naturally sinuous or curvy portion of a river. This is the La Platte River, so sort of just upstream from us in Heinsberg, on Shelburne Falls Road and O'Neill Road. And where the arrow is, you can see the river really curves around. Here on the right side is a straightened portion of the same river that's just upstream from this one. So this is the corner of 116. Here's Heinsberg Community School, here Silver Street. And you can see here the river just goes, it's like a perfectly straight line. So we actually straightened that river out in the 60s to try to, create more farm fields and that type of thing. But when we do this, the water actually flows faster, sort of down cuts more, and causes more issues that way. In the La Platte River watershed, which Charlotte has, some land in the La Platte, they have assessed 66 miles, and 14 miles of those were mapped as straightened. So it's about 21% of the assessed miles in the La Platte River watershed that have been straightened. As we saw this summer, flooding is a lot more common because of climate change, more rainfall. We're also getting more rain in the winter and these larger, heavier storms. So the vast majority of phosphorus reaches the lake during these major storm events. And with those heavy rainfalls, that, water soluble phosphorus fertilizer and those rich clay soils that I was telling you about really wash down into the lake and erode, farm fields, ditches, whatnot, into our surface waters. We also have a really large drainage area in Lake Champlain Basin. So a lot of land drains into Lake Champlain. So combined, all these things, the large drainage area, the clay soils, the past management practices, more development, and our heavier storms are really accelerating the rate of phosphorus that's getting into the lake. Because our river systems are so connected to lake health, these solutions to lake pollution really have to occur throughout our river systems, upstream and downstream, and it really takes this all-in approach. So I'm just going to show a brief video. Hopefully this will work this time. It didn't last time I tried this. It shows 3 river management principles, so like 3 ways that we might manage rivers. And they show the new strategy first, so like the way that we should manage rivers, followed by the historic stream alteration or ways that we used to manage rivers, and mentions why those replacements are important. Cross your fingers.
Thank you.
Lots of spinning going on here. Oh dear. Okay, we're going to give up on that because as cool as it is, it's really glitchy right now. And we are going to tell you a little bit about what the cool video showed, because that is going to be a little bit easier. Okay, so the first principle was essentially looking at moving buildings out of flood zones and reconnecting the river with its floodplain. So it's really important for our natural floodplains, here to be able to, the water to be able to spill out onto the lawn or playing field or whatever next to it. If we restrict our rivers or, try to control the water flow in the river, it can really cause problems not only for flooding downstream, but also can increase that amount of water that's heading down and carrying that sediment and phosphorus with it. When waters are allowed to spread out like this, they can drop sediment down, onto the ground. Waters can slow down and help recharge local groundwater. We can also slow the flow down by allowing these meanders or, curves in the river to reform instead of being this sort of straight shot river. With that increased stream length, the gentle river flows will ensure habitat conditions that, are conducive for fish and other animals, invertebrates and whatnot that require those, those conditions in the stream. And then finally, removing gravel from the stream bed or like digging it out can cause down cutting. So the river sort of cutting down further and further. It adds to the stream speed and force and eventually can cause, lots of issues like bridge collapses and other major problems, but also, of course, increases that sediment that goes into the lake. So the overall message in the video, which I can share with you later, is that what we do in one place is really affects what's going on downstream, and we all need to work together to within our watersheds and our catchments to be effective. Okay, so just quickly in Vermont, there are some new state regulations that take into account some of these new principles, which is great. Some of those include the 3-acre permit, where properties that have more than 3 acres of impervious surface or pavement have to essentially treat their water or take care of it before it, flows off their property. Municipal roads general permit, so our towns are doing a lot of work on upgrading the swales and crowning of roads that they own to, again, clean up water before it hits our streams. And then our required agricultural practices for the agricultural portions of the state. So towns and property owners have to meet these requirements, often at their own great expense. But there are, of course, voluntary measures that we can do too. Conservation, like here, this is a land trust conservation easement on this property that will allow this river to just move and flow naturally. Instead of being restricted.
Is that in Vermont?
Yeah, that's in
Great.
Sarksboro, actually, the Clifford Briggs farm.
Yeah.
Monitoring water quality can also help detect sort of hot spots in where there's a lot of phosphorus or a lot of pollution coming from. Lewis Creek Association has a water quality monitoring program that uses volunteers called South Chittenden River Watch. And it helps inform our project locations and designs, as well as the work of our state agencies. And I'll give you a little more detail in a minute about, how, like what those results look like and how towns and others might be able to use those to help improve town plans and that type of thing. So I'm going to show you a series of slides now that are related to water quality in Charlotte specifically. This is a map that, as you can see, is sort of this is the La Platte River watershed starting here in Heinsberg. Up here in Shelburne, you see the La Platte. You also see this stream, which is McCabe's Brook, just to the west of it. We have another couple tributaries here that you'll hear me point out tonight. Mud Hollow Brook here that flows into the La Platte. And then there are 3 sort of direct to lake drainages. So these are like smaller streams that just drain directly into Lake Champlain. We have Kimball Brook down here. We're sort of running this way. Thorpe Brook coming out here. These both drain into Town Farm Bay. And then we have Holmes Creek up here that drains out at the town beach. So on this map, what you're looking at, these small squares with the 4 colored icons or colored squares within them, I guess, are our water quality sampling stations. On the upper left of each of those, you'll see, as you'll notice, every single one has a red dot. That's phosphorus. So every single station that we've sampled here shows really high phosphorus levels or poor conditions. And the upper right is solids, or like the amount of like sediment and stuff in the water. You can see that's variable across the watershed, with green being sort of good conditions, yellow being moderate. Lower right is E. coli, a type of bacteria, and then lower left is chloride, which comes from road salts and whatnot. So this data is actually a little bit older. It came from 10 years of water quality sampling data that we did probably about a decade ago now. So a little bit outdated, but still useful because a lot of the trends hold true still. You can see again those water quality sampling stations. This is now zooming in just on Charlotte. And you'll also see additional data on the stream channel stability. So like how, how stable the stream is. So that's sort of the highlights around the edges of the stream, either in red or yellow. And then the smaller dots you see are culverts. So that's looking at how compatible the culvert is with the stream. Like, is it lined up with the way the stream is going? Does it allow aquatic organisms like fish to pass through the culvert, or is it like raised 2 feet so that a fish could never get up into the culvert and continue up the stream? So there's a lot of interesting information sort of in this. This is just like a stagnant map. You could download a PDF off our website and explore that a little more. But we are continuing to do some water quality sampling. So this is actually sort of a little bit old because we're working on analyzing the data from 2023 right now, and I had hoped to have it for you, but I don't. So, so this is 2021 data and 2022 data just for Charlotte. These values that you're looking at, the green dots, are phosphorus, and they're just sort of categorized generally. Like these are not like specific numbers, but the small dots are anywhere from 8 to 30, 30 to 100 is the medium sized dot, and 100 to 172 essentially is the big ones. So it kind of helps you see at least a few of the patterns. Like you can see that here, Mud Hollow Brook has some pretty high levels of phosphorus, and over here on the left, Thorpe Brook TO1 had some pretty high levels as well. So our data are in collaboration with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. They use the data in addition to their biological monitoring. So they go out to some of the same streams and same areas and do assessments for fish and for bugs, macroinvertebrates. And they try to, use these data to help understand like what streams might need to be listed as impaired or stressed, which is a designation that comes both from the state and the US EPA. So, so this is fish assessment results. Green, again, green is good, red is bad. And you're looking at, this is La Platte River, the big blue line. Over there on the left, where you're looking at that orange line, that's McCabe's Brook in Shelburne. And it is orange because it is listed as impaired for nutrients. And you can see there's just a short section where it stops there. That's about where Harbor Road crosses McCabe's Brook, just west of sort of the school. So you can see like the fish results were not great there. And that's one of the reasons that it was listed as impaired, because it doesn't support fish and aquatic life very well. Especially here, you can see those red dots in McCabe's. So those are the macroinvertebrates, the bugs. They're not doing well there. And so that section is listed as impaired. We have a few other funky dots here. That's in Heinsberg they sampled in the canal, the Patrick Brook Canal, which is kind of an interesting spot to sample anyways, because there's all sorts of strange things going on in Heinsberg's water, right? They dug this canal to like try to redirect the water and send it to different places. Okay, so the information that's sort of new or different tonight is that the Department of Environmental Conservation has recommended listing for 2 streams here in Charlotte. So one of them is Mud Hollow in Charlotte, which they're recommending listing to be impaired mostly due to agricultural causes. And that's from the mouth of Mud Hollow where it meets the La Platte up about 3 miles up the stream. And then also Holmes Brook, which is the one that drains out at the beach, recommended listing for partially for agriculture, but also for like encroachment. So things, I guess encroaching on the stream, for lack of a better word, from the mouth of the brook up about 2.7 miles. So that has not been finalized yet, but those are things that are in the works based on both the poor water quality conditions and then those biological assessments that I mentioned.
Are they going to try and improve buffers or anything? Because that aerial photograph, there's not many.
I am
buffers.
still learning information about what that means as far as like the agricultural side of things. Like you know, it sounds like maybe there will be more resources brought in to help farmers meet those required agricultural practices.
Yeah,
But beyond that,
I just worked for Agency of Ed for a short while. Yeah,
okay,
it's not, hasn't been a priority, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So unclear on all that. And we, you know, to be fair, like we don't do, I haven't done any ag projects in my time at LCA, so I don't have a lot of like background or knowledge about what that might look like or
Yeah,
how that collaboration might work, but
but they're hoping to emphasize it more. Is that who knows?
I'm learning information about the same speed you guys are, so I hope to learn more soon. So McCabe's Brook, as I mentioned, starts here in Charlotte. This is Pease Mountain, Charlotte Central School down here, Mount Pilot Road, and then it runs north, crosses under Route 7 at, this is like Vermont Teddy Bear Company here. Runs behind the School Street neighborhood. This is the Shelburne School, comes out through the La Platte River, like by the Tie Hall Trail, if you ever walk that, out to the La Platte. And that's the one that I mentioned was impaired sort of in the short stretch up to maybe like here. And so we've done some work recently, creating a stormwater master plan for this entire watershed, looking at both Charlotte and Shelburne. And we're now doing design work for a project that was identified in that plan. It'll involve like putting some woody structures in the stream to help sort of slow the water down, kind of like a beaver dam would, raise the bed level of the stream and allow the water to spill out into its floodplain, and do some tree plantings and also do some excavation in like one area to allow the stream to reach its floodplain really. So that's one of the projects that we have in the works recently. We're, you know, hopeful that we can develop further projects here in the upper McCabe's as well here in Charlotte. There are definitely stretches that need some trees and are straightened and, you know, could use some improvements to help improve water quality there. And of course, as well on Thorpe and Mud Hollow. Okay, so I'm gonna cruise through this kind of quickly because I think some of you have heard it before, but our Ahead of the Storm program is a program that showcases our principles of good sort of stormwater management or optimal stormwater management, including slowing the water down, spreading it out, and sinking it into the ground. And by installing these types of practices throughout the watershed, we'll really be able to help improve water quality in our streams and lake. This is one of your sites here in Charlotte. You may have seen our little signs around, including right out here outside the library. Slowing the water down, so installing these sort of check dams that will slow water down as it rushes down this swale and goes into, this is Thorpe Brook up here on East Thompson's Point Road. So allowing the water to kind of settle, drop its sediment, you know, the nutrients can be used by the plants that are in that swale. Spreading water out here, this is Heinsberg Town Garage. New garage was built 2 or 3 years ago now. This project was completed just during COVID, but essentially it involved excavating a lot of sediment and fill that had been placed next to the brook where there had been buildings and stuff built up on top of that. So sort of excavating that, allowing the brook to spill out into its floodplain, but then also putting in some rock and stone like log structures into the river to allow the brook to kind of, you know, sediment to fill up, brook bed level raises, and then it can spill out onto that floodplain a little more easily. And then finally, sinking water into the ground, Shelburne Community School. This is the sort of central bus circle there at the school. And originally all the water went into storm grates that were here sort of on the edges of the circle, directly from there into pipes into McCabe's Brook. So all those, you know, salts and whatever oil coming off cars was all just going straight into the brook. So we were able to design and build this rain garden, essentially a bioretention area that captures some of that water, most of that water before, you know, it goes directly into the brook. And it still does go into the brook via pipes that are underground, but before it gets there, it gets cleaned up, you know, sort of by the soil and the plants and structures here. And so the students have been really involved with both, you know, planting and then with maintenance work every year to go like weed the garden and make sure we're not getting a bunch of invasive species in there and whatnot. A couple ideas for towns, if you're involved with a town commission or that type of thing. Increasing our river setbacks, so enhancing our language for our protections of those river corridors and buffers, our floodplains and wetlands, both in our town plans and of course our land use regulations. Designing for climate change, so thinking about the fact that we're getting these larger storms and like how can we go above and beyond sort of our existing state regulations to, for example, maybe require a review or a stormwater permit for a property that has maybe it's a 10,000 square feet of impervious surface instead of an acre or a half acre, which is what the state requires. So without those sort of enhanced land management practices, our new weather patterns are going to change our lake sooner. Upgrading roads for larger storms. You guys probably recognize this. Again, East Thompson's Point Road. This roadside swale that we were able to improve is able to carry water from a 100-year storm down into the brook, as opposed to some of our swales, which they don't do that. Let's put it that way. And of course, applying sort of these, the state municipal roads general permit, which describes how towns have to manage their roads, taking those same principles and applying them to our private roads or driveways. If we do that sort of thing, we can allow the DRB to make decisions and make conditions on private road designs. Here in Charlotte, you have about 29% of your roads that are private. So not quite as much as Shelburne, but still a substantial amount that aren't falling under that municipal roads general permit. So, things like making requirements on crowning the road and doing roadside swales that include grass line ditches or rock check dams down the way to slow that water down and then clean it up before it gets to the streams. We have on our website our most recent water quality data in a story map format, so you can kind of scroll through and learn a little bit more about, what does all this stuff mean? We talked a lot about phosphorus tonight, but we also collect data on nitrogen, chloride, sort of what do these mean? How do our, data points near us look from year to year? So you can check that out on our Lewis Creek Association webpage. You guys do a great job here in Charlotte of protecting your natural areas using your Charlotte Land Trust is amazing and does a lot of really super work. This was Lewis Creek property in East Charlotte that was conserved with funding from Charlotte Conservation Fund and Land Trust and LCA as well. And then of course, mitigating our impacts from all of our past historic practices that were not so great. Building, farming too close to stream corridors and wetlands, mitigating our impacts from those stream alterations, like straightening streams that can now increase our flows and allow that phosphorus to load to the lake faster. So on your own property, again, these three principles, the slow spreading and sinking of water is really important to think about. You want to keep your soil on your property. You don't want to let it erode. You can do things like redirect your downspouts or put a rain barrel in, fixing those gullies as they begin. Again, fixing your driveways, crowning them so the water sort of flows off naturally and doesn't, concentrate in a certain area and cause erosion. Here, turn around that way. It's dark out now. So allowing water to soak into the soil, like here at the rain garden in Charlotte, at the library. And, that really allows that water to be cleaned up a little bit before it hits the swale that then goes down to the stream. And of course, planting natives that, native species can help in many ways, not just water quality, but also for pollinators and allow those, taller grasses and plants to soak up and catch more water. And of course, maintaining trees and shrubs along any of our waterways. That could even be just a ditch, because the more we can clean up and keep that water cool, minimize the pollutants and sediments that are reaching our streams, that's all going to be important. Other tips. And then a couple of programs I wanted to mention to you, Lakewise and Streamwise, if you're a lakeshore landowner or a stream landowner. These are two programs that have rolled out somewhat recently where you can have someone come to your property and assess it essentially and, tell you, like, are you doing a good job? What are some recommendations to earn this award? So each of them has sort of like a sign or something that you can post to say, I'm a Lakewise property. I've met all the requirements. I'm doing a good job as far as my water and lakeshore management is concerned. And then finally, the more exciting thing, the best thing ever that you've ever seen, is our new Landowners Guidance Manual, which will hopefully help you assess your property yourself and to look at like what problems might be. So I don't know, you guys can take a look at that. I'm going to click through a few slides, but feel free to pass that around. They are in all of our local libraries now to check out as well. So the manual really was put together. There's a lot of materials out there already for like how to build a rain garden, how to do stormwater management on your business, blah, blah, blah. But one of the things that we felt was missing was sort of how do you start? How do you assess your property? How do you know if you even have a problem? And then if you do have a problem, like what resources are available and how do you find them? So that's the goal of this manual, is to sort of give you an introduction, talk to you about stormwater management, give you some examples of how you might, draw a map of your property and like what that would look like. How do you map water flows? Like where does it go? And then to guide you through some possible solutions and good practices to think about. It includes a bunch of resources like those that I just mentioned to you. So this is just one of the pages in here for site assessment. So this is like a photo of the house, and then this is the image of what you might draw if you were outside assessing your property. Like, where does the water flow? What's going on here? There are trees here. There's a puddle. We've got a drain to the Winooski River. So, sort of thinking about how that might look. Possible solutions then. So it's sort of a series of like questions, like, do you have gutters on your roof? And if so, here are some options that you could do if you have erosion coming off your roof. It goes into some detail about how to calculate like the size. If you were to try to do a rain garden, for example, you wanted to build a rain garden on your property, how would you know like how much runoff is going to reach that area? So there are some details, calculations. How do you decide if like a rain garden would work where you are? If you want to let the water infiltrate, and so if it's not going to infiltrate into the ground, then don't build a rain garden there. So this tells you like how to dig a hole in the ground and see how the water drains, and if it would be a good site for that type of project. And then again, this list of variety of resources that can help direct you further. So this is pretty hot off the press. It's not even really, it's on our website, but it's like hidden. It's not in the menus yet. So, so you can go to this website or you can do the QR code, and hopefully soon we're going to get more like, press going and get it out there officially. But like I said, they're available at our local libraries. I think you can check it out here now, and Heinsberg and Shelburne and Moncton, Bristol, etc. So, so thank you guys all. I mean, your towns do provide support for LCA to fund some of our water quality sampling. So that's really important for us to pay for my time so that I can organize volunteers and make all this happen. And of course, we do have a really nice devoted group of volunteers who help collect those data. And if you're interested in joining us, we'd love to have you, as a water quality sampler or in some other capacity. So investing now in these preventive measures and fixing these past mistakes are really going to cost us less in the end. So appreciate you listening and coming tonight, and you're welcome to reach out to me with questions, my email and phone number, or I'll take them right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have a question. When
Yeah.
they're testing for, what are they testing for in those people besides phosphorus?
Phosphorus. So phosphorus, nitrogen, and chloride are from the past like 2 years. Prior to that, we did do E. coli testing. Our sister organization, Addison County River Watch, did a lot of that in the past for like swimming holes and that kind of areas.
And is that just like a snapshot at that time? Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have like any of the sort of continuous monitoring, but yeah, it's the downside, I guess, to E. coli monitoring is you can say like, here's a snapshot of what it was when we grabbed the sample that morning. It was really high. You shouldn't have been swimming that morning, but you're not going to get the results for like 24 hours or whatever. So, so our general guidance now is just like, if there's been rain or like high flow, don't go swimming. Like there might be really high bacteria levels. And then generally like things come down after that as the water drops. But yeah, we're not doing the E. coli testing this year because the state is not they're not funding the testing part of it.
So that got cut or something?
Yeah, there used to be more flexibility in the La Rosa partnership program where we had we created like our own sampling plans and whatnot designs, I guess. And now it's down to those three things that they'll analyze at the state lab. So we could do extra, like if we chose to do E. coli sampling, we could pay for it ourselves and take it up to a private lab or whatever and get results that way. But we haven't done that.
I was kind of curious about Lewis Creek, because that's in Charlotte too, or
Yeah.
is any of that considered impaired or getting that way?
It is, so there's some impairment for E. coli, but
Mm.
not for phosphorus or nitrogen. There's some of the recent, so I'll preface this by saying we're not testing in like lower, like Charlotte, Lewis Creek. And that's why I'm not showing you data because I don't have any recent data.
Okay.
We are doing some testing in one of the tributaries this year, Pond Brook, that comes through Moncton and is generally really high in nutrients. So we are looking at that. And we did some testing last year in like the headwater streams that are in really great condition, like up in Starksboro and whatnot. And they all have really great numbers for phosphorus and nitrogen and chloride, as you would expect, I guess, coming out of a nice forested headwater. But getting back to your original question, which I've now forgotten because I got distracted by data in my head. You were asking about the Lewis Creek, like here in Charlotte, like the lower, just like conditions in general. Oh, I know where I was going with that. So the more recent data that came from Lake Champlain Basin program, they have a guy who does fancy data analysis that I don't understand. He looked at the trends in phosphorus in both Lewis Creek and La Platte and like all the sort of main tributaries. And as I recall, pretty much everything is increasing. So like in the last decade or so has been increasing. La Platte, interestingly, declined maybe 20 years ago. And then since has been like creeping up slowly, but so La Platte like looked kind of good in the sense that it had a big decline a while ago, but everything, I think all the other tributaries are increasing.
How do you, I mean, there's less farming now than there was 20 years ago. How do you account for that?
I do not, because I don't do these fancy analyses that I don't fully understand, but that's a really good question. I would love to ask the guy, this Matt Vaughn at the Basin Program, how I know he had some method for taking into account land use changes versus like human, like other like water changes. I don't remember the details. I listened to a webinar on it. Like a little hazy, but yeah, that would be a good question to ask him about how that factored in. But personally, like we don't, you'll see like if you go to our story map on our website, we have like 1 year and then we have the next year and then we have the next year. Like we don't have sort of an overarching trend analysis for like our data year to year, partially for that reason, because it's really hard to compare year to year when every year is different. Like this summer was crazy high flows like a lot of the time, and so you take a sample every 2 weeks and like you know, you might get a lot of high flows one year and then a lot of low flows the next year, and they're just like not that comparable without some serious statistics that I don't have skills in.
If we wanted to get started, so it seems like the book, is the best place to start.
I think so. If you're like, yeah, if you just want to look at your property or your
Yeah.
town's property or whatever, and like try to figure out if there's something you could do, or like if you have a problem, there's sort of a column on the left side that's just like sort of good ideas, you know, that anyone can do. But hopefully it describes some of the other, there's like a glossary in there that shows you pictures of like, what does erosion look like? Like, how would you go through that?
And is there any correlation between invasive and stormwater or?
So I can speak to only one thing that I know about, which is Japanese knotweed. And I did read a study where they looked at like, so they had kind of like beaver dams across the stream, and then they had some that had native plants on the edges and some that had knotweed on the edges. And the knotweed ones were much more likely to like skirt around the dam, like kind of blow out the bank, essentially. So even though knotweed was theoretically planted for like erosion control purposes, it really it does the opposite. So much more likely to cause like stream bank erosion and that kind of thing.
And when you're removing, I read some stuff in your newsletter,
Yeah.
Japanese knotweed, do you like cart it away? I mean, there's so much, I mean, I'm starting to get it on my property,
you?
which
Yeah.
is such a bummer.
Yeah.
And like last summer I tried to dig it up and
Yeah, it's so hard.
should I burn it? Like, do you have a
Yeah.
little guide?
Right,
about it?
yeah, I know, I need to create something, because like I have knowledge from, this is our first year doing the project. But I've been talking to a ton of people, including this consultant that we're working with on just manual control. And so he has a lot of tidbits in his head that I've picked up and talked to other people who are doing this. And essentially they say the stalks, like once you cut them,
Mhm.
very little risk of like rerouting or causing any.
really?
Yep.
Oh,
And
good.
so they recommend throwing it on like a pallet or something just to raise it up off the ground a little bit, just in case, you know.
Yeah,
And then if you do get into like the roots or the rhizomes, that needs to be elevated on a pallet.
but you can,
Ideally with like a
Yeah.
tarp or something, or you're monitoring it to make sure like if it blew off, you're throwing it back on the pallet.
it's kind of right on floodplains up there.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a hard, right? Yeah, so you definitely don't want the rhizomes right in the floodplain. So I would say cart those off. The
Yeah.
stalks probably fine.
But that's good to know. I was worried
yeah.
the stalks were gonna,
Seems like they dry out pretty quickly from my understanding.
Yeah.
Like once they're out for.
but if I had
couple
like a
days.
little bonfire and threw the
Yeah.
guys, if I can get them to
Sure.
burn. Cause it's really, I mean, I've just seen like on the New Haven River,
Oh, it's so bad, yeah.
horrendous, and there's a big patch near the access, right on Tyler Bridge Road.
Yeah.
So if you guys wanna tackle.
Yeah, I
that,
know.
that's, like,
I
coming
know,
down
there's a
on my
bunch of them.
property. I'm pretty sure that's where it's all
Yeah,
coming from, and I actually have a little GPS unit. I was gonna like get carried away and just start GPSing where it's appearing.
mhm.
I used to do computer mapping on sort of and
Yeah.
all this stuff, but I'm just like picturing it turning into, and then there's some
Yeah.
across the creek from me, but I
Right.
don't even know those folks. and-
Yeah, yeah. We are doing an iNaturalist project, so you could snap, you know, we're gonna have a thing this spring to like
Oh, good.
do an iNaturalist demo and like talk about
Great.
knotweed and whatnot.
Yeah.
Hopefully in early May.
I have a
think.
comment about knotweed. I'm on
Okay.
the Zoom.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. It's edible, actually, especially when it's young like this. It tastes like rhubarb.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard
Yeah, I've
that
heard that.
about,
Or asparagus.
right. Yeah, I've heard good things about like the rhubarb ice cream or something like that out of knotweed. Yeah, knotweed ice cream.
Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I guess, you know, I don't know all the details, but I know that it's like a denying of photosynthesis, essentially. You just cut and cut and cut and cut. So like the first year we're cutting like 12 to 14 times, like once a week, essentially, during the growing season. And then it's gonna expand and we're gonna go, oh my God, now we're gonna go, okay, that's fine. We knew this was gonna happen. then we're gonna cut and cut and cut and cut the second year. And hopefully by like the third or fourth year, it starts to like contract. And then, you know, by the 10th or 12th year, we've got just a couple little stalks coming up, and you go, boop, boop. Like, that's the end of that.
An amazing seed producer, so you can stop at producing seed. That seems like that would really help.
So what I hear from Mike, our consultant, is that the seeds are usually not viable.
Oh,
And so it doesn't
so don't
matter.
freak out about that.
Right, don't freak out
Okay.
about the seeds. It's usually the rhizomes and the
Uh-huh.
roots that are spreading.
Oh,
And they're like washing, like you said, washing downstream. And then once they establish, they spread laterally and pop up in new places. So
and
we
is
have
there
our work
anything
cut
we
out
can
for us.
plant to like crowd them out?
Yeah, he had some suggestions, most of which I don't remember right now. There's a woman in Ferrisburg who swears by black walnut. She says she planted black walnut because it does have that like suppressive,
Right.
you know,
but
to
that's
other
okay.
plants.
I don't know if it could take all the flooding.
right? Yeah.
What's that Jerusalem artichoke? Cause that's all over
Oh,
the
that's all
creek,
over. Yeah.
and that's very, I mean, that's a native, right?
I don't know.
Um,
I'm gonna say no, but I
yeah.
don't know for a
I
fact.
think it is, cause the
Okay.
native people used to, cause I was thinking about, but I don't wanna be spreading, yeah, so if
Right.
you come up with a guide.
Yeah, yeah, of like plants
ideas, or
that could
I'd
help,
even help, I'd pitch
Yeah.
in to make the guide.
right? Help
Be happy,
suppress or
yeah.
something. Yeah. Yeah, so I've been getting a lot of questions about that.
Hmm.
I definitely need to work on. Not part of our grant, but
Yeah,
I'd like to have like a one pager, you know, here's what
Right.
we're doing and like, here's how we're doing it and.
I think that could be helpful for a lot of people, just to.
it's so
Yeah,
over,
it's
I
such
just,
a big-
God, I've seen it take over so many, or long ago, I used to live up in Craftsbury Common, and just when I bike around there now, it's like everywhere up there, and it was nowhere.
Oh, really?
around,
Oh,
like,
man.
whatever it was 30 some plus years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
It just, in the New Haven River, it's just scary, and I have some friends who live in Worcester, it's all over that. I'm sure it's a branch of the history, I think.
okay, yeah,
It just,
yeah, it's pretty bad.
yeah, it makes good honey.
Oh,
I have bees.
gotcha, I've heard that from beekeepers before, that flowers are good for the bees.
Here's like, I know like the Mad River Valley has a
Yeah,
lot,
that's
right?
another-
Like there, is
yeah.
there something we can learn from there?
Yeah, yeah, I
Curious.
did, I need to chat with them, I got some materials from, I
That's
think it was
true.
Warren Conservation Commission that was doing a lot of work there, so I have some documents from them, and folks at the Intervale are doing some work, and I think there's maybe people in Huntington, anyway, so I've chatted with a bunch of people and just trying to
Yeah,
gather
it'd be great
forces,
to have
but-
like a little one page,
yeah,
just, yeah, cause I'd hate to. All right, throw in a bunch of Jerusalem artichoke and then find
Right.
out like, what? You were the one.
you're the one who introduced the Jerusalem artichoke. I know who did it.
Right.
You heard it here first.
I'm gonna hold off till I make absolute sure. it's-
But yeah, I think, we have our work cut out for us for sure, but I'm envisioning like, I would love to have this little army of people who are like the knotweed warriors, and they, you know, like, this is my patch and I'm gonna like go out once a week and cut this, or like me and my neighbor are gonna split duties and.
Do you ever try and recruit like the Boy Scouts or something, like they have a little badge? like a
Yeah,
knotweed
right, the
badge
knotweed
or
badge, I love it. That's
The
sounds
Girl
like a great
Scouts.
idea.
Yeah,
The
the
Girl
Girl
Scouts,
Scouts, of
right?
course.
Yeah, yeah, well, these Girl Scouts are more into shopping than they are
Well,
knotweed,
yeah.
unfortunately.
I can tell these
Maybe they can.
little
learn
boys out
not
there
being
hacking.
trip if they.
There you go, there you go. So yeah, look for more information on that,
Great.
put it
Yeah,
out in our
I'm-
newsletter, and,
You have one person very hungry for information.
okay, very good, good to know.
And I think the iNaturalist thing, we've done a couple of things here, Cheryl has, our children's librarian, people are really interested, so if
Yeah,
you need help or want.
okay,
a
cool.
form of citizen science.
yeah. Okay, yeah, awesome. Yeah, I started a little project, so it does exist now, and you can snap a photo of knotweed and
Do we
upload
know
it.
where it is in
project.
Charlotte
I
or?
think I have a ton of mine.
I
I tell from the honeysuckle right now.
Yeah, right. I don't know that much about, I don't think there's very much down here in the lower watershed yet, but like on Lewis Creek anyways.
It's really changing, like.
'Cause
midway,
it's
like in
Starksboro is,
Moncton. Yeah.
yeah,
Starksboro's
and coming your way from
Yeah.
Starksboro, I think.
And there's a huge patch right on Keller Bridge Road that, it's just like
yeah, it was upstream at,
exploding.
yeah, I was upstream at the nursery walking around with them. There's a huge
Hmm.
patch there. I think it comes in, Hollow Brook has a lot of it. And
Oh,
it
really?
hits Lewis Creek, like
Hmm.
near them, and they have like bigger than this room, huge patch. I'm like,
Mm,
was not really what I hoped to see. I
yeah.
was picturing like little patches that were more
Well,
manageable. but-
at my place, it's still a little, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to, but like last year, and I was worried, a tiny little bit of the stock was gonna like multiply.
Yeah,
And then it's like not practical to lug all that stuff elsewhere.
yeah,
Because in my
exactly.
twenties, I used to have a garden down by the creek.
Oh my gosh.
Wheelbarrow stuff down there, but like now 63, it's like.
Yeah.
My back. is
Yeah.
shot.
Now you can just wheelbarrow the little bits of roots that you get.
I hope they
And not
don't
worry
catch
about the rest.
on Fire or something.
Yeah, I think if it just gets tossed up, sometimes, I mean, I've even hung them like, kind of like buckthorn,
Yeah,
just hung them in a tree or whatever to
Right.
dry out.
invasives are just so.
Yeah, challenge.
Buckthorn, honeysuckle.
Yeah,
Well,
did
what-
you have any buckthorn recommendations?
Buckthorn, I do not, we just cut it on our own property and cut it and cut it and cut it every year.
Okay,
Refuge here in Charlotte has done a lot.
Yeah, it's
So they might
that
be a
place is like
good-
invasive
They've got,
hell. Yeah.
perhaps have some good use.
Yeah, they do have like those little digger things,
They have.
weed
two you can
wrenches.
Check out at
maybe.
the one.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, there you go. You
Montgomery's
can
got
check 2 out at
some.
the Charlotte Library. But a lot of people use those little herbicide, like buckthorn blaster things too. They're like a little bingo, dauber with
mm-hmm.
herbicide in it, and you just cut and then dab the stump with that. It's supposed to.
Yeah, well, for watersheds, I was worried about using any kind of chemicals. I
Yeah.
didn't really want to do that, so.
You can also, they have buckthorn baggies, they're plastic.
Hmm.
And I've used those and you have a little tie, you just put this heavy duty plastic bag.
Over the stump.
And another thing, like I was not happy about all the plastic, if you have a can that happens to just fit.
Oh,
So I'll pound a can down
okay.
on,
So it just can't resprout from that.
right,
stump.
and sometimes you still have to go around and
Mhm,
kind of like have this whole circuit I do.
Right.
You can also,
Would
like,
work.
I have a thing called a draw knife, you can sort of girdle the tree if it just has one stem, but a lot of them have like multiple stems.
Right.
But I've had good luck girdling some,
Okay.
and yeah, they just die.
I've
That's a
had
good
that
idea.
idea like on walks, just like. in the right
Spring
way,
a
I
little-
just like girdle it.
Yeah.
It works. And I have a.
That's a
ton
good
of
idea.
buckthorn, Yeah,
Right, I'll have to check out your
you have a
knife.
buckthorn sheet too.
Yeah, exactly. Your preferred tool for management.
I have a
Yeah.
Question outside of invasives.
Yeah,
Like looking at your water quality sampling map. Is there like a wish list of places you want to set up water quality stations? Because I saw it's like kind of in
Yeah.
like scattered places and not like the whole of our town at least.
yeah.
And I guess, I don't know what it takes to set up a new water quality monitoring station,
Right.
but is that an idea for the future? Is that priority?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We sort of like switched our overall plan, like maybe 3 years ago when sort of Larissa program switched their like priorities. Originally we had like sort of set stations that we wanted to monitor like every year and try to do like sort of that long-term trend data. And so now we're kind of more focused on like trying to get up into some of the like tributaries, some of the smaller waterways that maybe we haven't sampled before. So we are doing Prindle Brook, which comes down into Lewis Creek. We have 2 stations there on like sort of 2 forks of that, I guess, that come together. And then as far as other areas go, we do have like several other stations that you're not seeing on the map that, we've sampled in the past, but like aren't prioritizing, I guess, this year or whatever. But I'm always interested in like, like what's going on higher up in the watershed. Like we know that Thorpe has a ton, or Kimball both have a lot of nutrients coming in, and it's always a question for me of like, are there things that we could do as far as like improvements, project wise. If we get more data, is it gonna help us, prioritize a project or learn more about like the source or do outreach to landowners, that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in learning more about sort of that, like the Thorpe Kimball area is just very high in nutrients, and we do our frog bit removal there in Town Farm Bay, and there's been like both, I think 2 years ago and maybe last year as well, like cyanobacteria blooms that have inhibited our work. Like, oh, it's nasty today, we're not going to go out. So that's a concern, and I would love to like gather more, I guess, more information on what's going on there and see how we can make improvements. My fear is that a lot of it is like sort of past agriculture, even if it's not like current day agriculture, that like I'm not sure that anyways, I'm ready to tackle those projects. Trying to think about I should pull up the map again and look at other places. We can't go backwards. I might have to get back to you on that. Think a little more about it. Yeah. Okay,
Well, thanks.
thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks. a lot.
Appreciate it. Glad you came out tonight. Otherwise I would be sitting here all alone. Thanks for coming, Laura.
Thank you. It was very informative. Appreciate it.
Great. Take care.
Thank you too.
Bye.